And I have found over studying history and other kinds of things is there's always this charismatic movement. There is this we have to return power to the people. We have to provide for the working class. We have to give education and healthcare and all of these very positive goals, you know. And then, unfortunately, one of these leaders of the reform group seems to attain power, but they don't do what they promised to do. It spirals into a tyranny, and then maybe even a dictatorship, and then maybe even a violent dictatorship. This is the history of humankind. If you put too much power into the hands of one individual and there are no checks and balances, ultimately the people suffer. So tell us a little bit about the history of Venezuela and how it got to be what it is.
Of course, thank you. And thank you for having the Venezuelan issue today in your program. We really appreciate it. For the last 18 years since Chavez came to power, democracy in Venezuela has been deteriorating slowly but surely. When he came to power, as you mentioned, he made all these promises to the underserved people. Venezuela, in no way, was a perfect country before Chavez. We had a lot of issues. So he was the strong man who came to fix it all. He won the elections in 1998 by a regular margin. He won by 54% only. So it's a really regular election. And then once he got into power, he had a movement to rewrite the constitution. And this is the way to keep power. Back then in 1999, when they rewrote the constitution, they changed the presidential term from 5 years to 6 years. And they also came up with a system in which elections would be, quote unquote, transparent. They made everything automated, so there wouldn't be a question of who's winning the elections. Now, mind you, North Korea, Cuba, they also have elections. So how Chavez came on to power was through a failed coup that had back in 1992. He spent 2 years in jail, and when he did that, he actually became friends with Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro back in the 90s was struggling because back in 1991, the Soviet bloc in Europe had fallen down, and up until then, Russia was funding the Cuban Revolution. They were giving billions of dollars to maintain the Cuban strategic geopolitical position in the world, so they could have access to that region. So in the 90s, Castro was struggling and he was looking for a way out of a struggle, and he meets Hugo Chavez. In 1994, when Chavez comes out of jail, he goes and visits Havana, and they start this very, very strong relationship. In 98, Chavez wins the election, and Chavez finds a way actually to get back in the game and gets funded by the Venezuelan regime. And when I say regime, Venezuelans don't say government because it is a regime. Just recently, we are officially calling it a dictatorship. On March 31st, the Supreme Court of the country proposed to strip the National Assembly, which is our Congress, from its powers and pretty much take over those powers. 48 hours later, they took back that proposition, but it was done already. There had been a fissure in the democracy in the democratic system, and it was officially called a coup. When the Supreme Court takes powers from Congress, it is a coup. Fast forward 1 month, on May 1st, the current president, Maduro, he proposed to initiate a new National Constituent Assembly to write a new constitution, which is illegal by our constitution. So currently, we are in a dictatorship. One more thing. Since April 1st, Venezuelans have taken to the streets. They've been protesting nonstop. Up until now, we have over 2,000 people who have been detained. We have about 50 people who have been murdered by regime forces. During the protests, they're using arms that mostly they buy from Russia, and we'll get there. And they're also using even expired tear gas bombs, which are dangerous because when a tear gas bomb is expired, it breaks into cyanide, and that is poisonous.
So you say that they're getting a lot of support, at least military support from Putin. Does Putin have any of his operatives in Venezuela to prop up that government?
So what it is, it's not support from them. The Venezuelan regime has bought
Okay.
military, weapons from Russia, and they've had some that there is a treaty where actually they have joined forces and they have meetings and they talk about these things. What has been proven, though, is that in Venezuela we do have Cuban operatives.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me something. We talk about, all these wonderful pie in the sky promises that these charismatic leaders make. But, I wonder, do people really realize how badly they're being lied to, and are they just willing to accept those lies because they're so desperate for something better?
Yes. So at the beginning, everything was wonderful because the way the Chavista regime started was through the slow progression of setting things up so they could keep power. So at the beginning, they made promises. There were a lot of social programs that were initiated, but over time, those programs could not be continued because the money was being
Not there.
siphoned by corruption.
Okay. We're going to take a break, Maria, and then we'll come back after the break, folks. You are listening to Voice of Democracy, Arizona, on Independent Talk Radio, KFNX, 1100 AM. Our phone number is 602-277-5369. Give us a call, and we will be happy to tell you how it is that people who come and promise you 1,000 things and then don't keep their promises are no better than the tyrants. So let's take an early break, and we'll be back after the break, and we certainly want your phone calls. Tyranny has started with a charismatic movement. We follow me, we will set you free. Follow me, we'll give you healthcare, education, free land, free food, free Rolls Royces. You're going to get everything. Just follow me. And the promises that were made and not kept.
Promises in Venezuela were what you just said.
What I just said. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The people they felt like they were underserved by previous governments, and they felt like they needed something different.
Do the people in Venezuela live in fear? That's the main thing
Yes.
that we need to know.
Currently,
Okay.
yes.
How many people have been assassinated? Did you say?
So in this round of protests that started on April 1st, about 50.
How often are members of families whisked away, under dubious circumstances because they dared to criticize?
So during the protests in this year, there have been over 2,000 protesters arrested. As again, they're taken for a few days. Sometimes they're taking longer. Also, media is restricted, so civil liberties have also been attacked. There were some instances recently where actually people had been arrested just for tweeting against the government. Yes, tweeting.
Are union leaders, are church leaders, are community leaders, do they have their thumb on these people?
No, union and churches are actually with the people. They are supportive of change right
And
now.
does the government try to restrict their ability to speak out?
Yes, they do. And it's all propaganda. It's the message that they give out. They try to say that the people is with them when they're not anymore. Currently, Maduro has an approval rating of about 20%.
We have a caller on the line. I'm not going to try to read the name here, but welcome to the program. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the program.
I'm just here to support my friends and family that I love from Venezuela, and to hope something happens quickly from the world organizations. I see nothing taking place from the world community. I know Latin America is meeting to discuss how they can help, but it's very disheartening to see the suffering and nothing's taking place from either United States or anywhere else.
What can the average American do to support the people in Venezuela?
I'm hoping, obviously donations. A friend sent a link this past week to send either money or donations. I'm also looking to, contact I work for a very large company. I know in the past for any kind of disasters or humanitarian efforts, they had like a company match for employees to donate. I'm going to see if I can, maybe get something like that started. And again, there's never anything really on the news. Everything's Donald Trump. So I don't know how many people are really aware unless they have friends or family that post something on social media.
Maria, how can we help? Do we need to broaden our outreach to the American citizens? How can we help?
The way to help is to spread the word. Currently, there are many articles out there. So if you just go ahead and do a Google search, just write Venezuela and look for news. Most outlets will give you very, very accurate information. There is the Pan Am Post, Washington Post mostly, depending on the writer. So there are articles out there telling you about what's happening there. There's also a hashtag. It's hashtag SOS Venezuela. If you Google that, you will also find information about what's happening in the country.
Can we send contributions to the church in Venezuela and the unions and the social groups,
So
whatever?
currently what's happening is most of the assistance to Venezuela is being directed through Miami, because that's where the most Venezuelans live. There are, I can actually share with you specific organizations that are sending
Could
medicines.
you do that now?
And, it's in Spanish.
That's okay.
Yes, so it's Ayuda Humanitaria para Venezuela. It's AYUDA, humanitarian, with an IA at the end, para Venezuela. If you look them up, they have a website and they also have a Facebook page, and they're doing an amazing job. They are taking care of a lot of people. They help shelters, they help hospitals, and they even help homeless pets in the country.
So can you post that on our Voice of Democracy page on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say, are the protesters there to change the regime? And why aren't other countries helping?
So the Venezuelan regime, when Chavez was alive, they made a very good effort to buy friends in the region. So by giving money and oil, now they have a few countries that are supportive of the regime. So whenever it's time to take votes on the OAS or the UN, those countries support Venezuela.
So where do countries like Colombia, Bolivia, the Guianas, and Brazil stand on all this?
So Colombia is with the Venezuelan people. They have the regime still has the support of Bolivia, Ecuador, and several island countries in the Caribbean, and it is because they
Trinidad.
No, Trinidad actually in the last vote, Trinidad they didn't vote.
Okay.
They just stayed away from it.
Okay.
So that was the most recent vote we had in the OAS.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's what's happening, you know.
Okay.
During the Chavez years, the country actually received about almost $900 billion from oil revenues. Currently, we only have $10 billion left in reserve to pay for debt and any other commitments that the government has made. And one more thing with that, actually, one of those loans that we have taken is with Russia.
Putin strikes again.
Right.
The regime took a loan with Russia, and a part of the deal was that they were given 49% of the Citgo oil company in the U.S. So that is a big thing right now, because
Wow.
if they do not pay to Russia by the end of this year, Rosneft, the Russian oil company, might be taking over Citgo in the U.S.
Maria, we've only got about a minute, and what I'd like to do is, can I call on you to come back maybe sometime in July and give us an update and bring more
course.
information?
Thank you very much.
And then maybe you can talk to friends in Venezuela and see how things are going. And it's been a pleasure to have you on here. We don't do this kind of stuff very often, unfortunately, but it's not from lack of trying. And I, for one, Trisha, did you have a closing moment? We got just like a half a second.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I'm very interested with what's going on down there,
Yeah.
and I think that other countries need to start assisting. Everyone's talking about, you're right, Trump and Syria, and how we weren't involved in Syria. Well, maybe we need to start getting involved down south.